Hello and welcome to the second edition of Double the Cup. We've just finished the Matildas taking on the Republic of Ireland. Matildas going out 1-0 winners in this game, and lucky enough to be joined this evening by A-League women's legend Teresa Polias and A-League's commentator Teo Pellizzeri. Tell me, what did you think of the game tonight?
Look, it was above all, and in a major tournament, most importantly, a positive result for the Australian team, which was great. But look, a lot of takeaways, I think, both teams, positives and negatives for sure.
Pokuah, it was a concept that we discussed on Dub Zone during the summer. RBA, it's not the Reserve Bank of Australia, it's results-based analysis. And the results-based analysis is Australia won. And without Sam Kerr, which was a bombshell, I think they got away with one tonight. But within the bubble, I think this will simply galvanise them further. We can perhaps talk about what didn't quite work from the outside, but I imagine inside they will be absolutely thrilled that with the mental hit, with the emotional hit of no Sam Kerr, they were resilient and they were winners in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, this result will do a lot for them, as you said, and I think they can take some positives out of the likes of Katrina Gorry playing really well in the middle. I thought I know Steph Catley won player of the match, but I thought Katrina Gorry did the most, and particularly in that first half. And I think there's a lot to learn, and that's positive knowing that this tournament is not over yet, so you can make those adjustments and we can get better from here.
So, Teresa, over the next few days before the Nigeria game, we're going to hear more and more from the players coming out about what it has meant to lose Sam Kerr. They're probably having those chats in the mixed zone right now as they leave the stadium. So what do you imagine would have gone through the camp since that training session yesterday morning? Everyone kept it tight as a drum. It didn't leak out. It would have been a bombshell story had it did, and yet it was a bombshell when the team sheet was released. So take us inside Matilda's camp. What do you think the 24 hours leading up to kickoff would have been like for them with the emotional weight of knowing that Sam Kerr wasn't going to play?
Look, firstly, well done to everyone for keeping it under wraps, because it was an absolute bombshell. And I think initially the players would have been really, really shocked and perhaps even stressed out. I mean, not only is she arguably our best player, but she's the captain. So she's had a really consistent run of form, and she's been injury free for so long. So huge shock would have gone through the camp. But it's down to business now. They can't sort of dwell on that, and they had to go out and do the job, and they did the job, and I think that's a positive to actually take from tonight.
Now, the Matildas have a long, fraught history with penalties, both penalty shootouts and penalties in games.
Did you mention something about the penalties yesterday, Teo, and last night's show?
I did mention something about the penalties. I said that the referee, the only other time that she'd refereed us, she gave us a penalty, and indeed that came to pass tonight. But let's set that aside. Let's talk about Steph Catley's penalty and the decision for it to be Steph Catley, because 2016 Olympics, 2019 World Cup, Elise Kellon-Knight's in-game penalty in the 2018 World Cup. This generation, this group of players has a rotten record with penalty kicks. So what did it mean to see Steph Catley decide that she was the one to take, and also the fact she put it away? And I did catch her press conference. She said that she's always confident about taking a penalty, but it was more or less an on-ground decision for her to step up as the captain and take the penalty in Sam Kerr's absence.
Well, even tonight, it was actually Caitlin Ford that stepped up initially. So whether that was gamesmanship or a last-second decision for whatever reason, maybe Caitlin Ford just had a dash of nerves and sort of said, actually, you know what, you step up, Steph, you're confident. But yeah, I understand the on-field decision, because you want it to be the person who's most confident, given the track record there. But she absolutely took it brilliantly. It was a phenomenal hit.
You've lived the World Cup experience, you've lived the Matildas experience, you're part of the exclusive club that can say that you played football for Australia. And what was it like when they walked out, the reaction to the national anthem, every time that Ellie Carpenter or Courtney Vine broke onto the ball, and then, of course, the aftermath of the penalty goal?
Yeah, look, I couldn't wipe the smile off my face, and there was so many emotions running through me as a lover of football, and it's a dream come true to see a World Cup on home soil. And then you think, imagine actually playing in it. Like, that's just next level stuff. So let's, really think. You can look at the performance tonight, but overall the occasion was just so huge, and would have been pretty overwhelming for the group. So to get the result on such a huge occasion was very positive.
And just before we dive into some of the things that didn't quite work for Australia, let's go with the ultimate positive, which was 75,000 fans here tonight. So many youngsters, so many aspiring footballers, so many fans of the game who are going to want their football fix. How important are nights like tonight for the A-League Women's to tell everyone, all 75,000 people who are here, if you love these players, you have an entire league that's going to be running for 22 weeks plus finals coming up in October, and you can feel these emotions and build these bonds with players through the summer right here in our backyard. It's not just the World Cup, it's the A-League Women's too.
Well, this is why you host the World Cup. You know, it's not just for bringing in, you know, investment and things like that. It's actually to leave a legacy and win new fans over. And if you look around tonight, there was such a mixture of fans here that I think the game's going to win over, and the more and more successful the Matildas are at this tournament, the more and more fans I'll win over for Australian football.
Pokuah, before I bias you with my own numbers and my own observations, what do you think didn't work for the Matildas tonight? Obviously they won and we banked the 3 points, but what didn't work as far as the performance was concerned?
I just don't think we built up enough. I think we kind of reverted to something that we saw early in Tony Gustafsson reign, where we saw those long balls across field trying to send it to Sam Kerr. Obviously Sam Kerr's not out there tonight, and we just weren't cutting it in, and the entry passes into the box weren't there. They kept getting deflected out, and we just weren't as crisp as we needed to be. And I think having Mary Fowler so high up at times, she just kind of got lost in the game, and we just didn't get to see her brilliance in it. And I think if we push her a little bit deeper, maybe we get to see a little bit more of her creative play and a little bit more movement in that front three.
T, we played against an Ireland team who, you know, were true to their identity. They defended for their lives. They played a back five a lot of the time, and they didn't really have the technical quality to exploit Australia once they made a go of it in the last 20 minutes and particularly in the last 10 minutes. So what were your impressions of what did and didn't work in open play for the Matildas tonight?
Yeah, look, Ireland defended when they were set with a 5 at the back, 4-1. So it was going to be very hard to break them down if you weren't fast enough and if you mucked around with the ball in the front third. And perhaps, we did resort to a few unnecessary long balls at times where the conditions of the pitch didn't really allow for that. The ball kicked on every time. So a few too many long balls that were unnecessary, a few miscued passes, and all in all, getting into the front third, there weren't many chances created.
I was getting flashbacks to the Asian Cup, to be honest, Pokuah, because it wasn't just the diags. I thought there were a lot of aimless long balls played from a central position in defensive midfield to hope really to hit one of the strikers in between 2 or even 3 Ireland defenders, and often those were going over the top, out for goal kicks, down to the keeper, but more often than not, out for goal kicks. There was a lot of wasted possession, I thought, and a lot of zero-thought passes that were played in that midfield. More so in the first half, funnily enough. Actually, you know, as much as Ireland made a go of it in the second half, I think the first half, when Ireland were unashamedly playing for a draw and happy to settle for 0-0, that worries me more than what we saw when they made a go of it in the second half.
Yeah, I think at times those long balls, we were kind of waiting and hoping for some brilliance of individual play, and I just don't think that's conducive to winning this tournament. But obviously it is just the first game, so we've just got to calm down a little bit. But I just think that sometimes, particularly in the first half, we were sending it forward to Caitlin Ford and seeing if she could create something. Obviously, we've seen her do it in the Champions League for Arsenal, have those wonderful strikes outside of the box. But I'm just hoping we need a little bit more in the middle and just put the Irish. We should have put the Irish defence under a lot more pressure, considering this, when you look at the squads on paper, we are much stronger as a side, but we still got the win, so that's the all-important 3 points.
Teresa, a quick word on defeated Ireland. They didn't have a shot on target until the 97th minute. They ended up with 0.6 XG, but they doubled their XG literally in the last minute of the game. So first shot on target will do that. Is there any plausible road for them to get out of the group, given it would now rely on getting something off Canada?
Look, I don't think... I think they'll go home with their heads held high. They looked positive after the game. I saw Denise O'Sullivan going around making sure everyone's head was kept up. That last half an hour, they looked threatening, more threatening than what the XG states. But I think that there's a lot of takeaways there, and perhaps they were too conservative early on. Perhaps they should have gone for it earlier in the match, because once the game opened up, they were actually winning corners.
I think the problem is they would have come in with a plan, and to throw it out on an hour's notice that Sam Kerr's not playing, that's incredibly hard to do, isn't it? And I think that's why I said they were true to their identity in terms of the way they set up to defend.
They were true to it, and I think they stuck to the plan because that's how they prepared. So why change things, like you said, with 60 minutes before a game? That's just silly. So they went for it. Look, Matildas scored, which forced them then to go forward. They had nothing to lose. They sent more numbers forward. They started winning set pieces, which they're very, very dangerous off. Corners, they looked incredibly dangerous as well.
Now, the game changes. The substitutions. We saw Courtney Vine come off for Emily Van Egmond. We then saw Mary Fowler come off for Claire Polkinghorne, I believe. So the substitutions were increasingly applying the handbrake as the game went on. A number of players warmed up who ultimately never really got close to being subbed on. Pokuah, we look to the bench, we see Sam Kerr's injured, we see Kaya Simon's injured. I know we shook hands yesterday and we said we're only allowed to refer to a player that's outside the 23 once per episode, but my goodness, did we miss Holly McNamara tonight? I know we could have brought on Alex Chidiac as a left winger, but it makes no sense to me that the exact player you would have subbed on, I think, in this situation, if Ireland were holding us out and we needed that bit more spark and creativity, is going to be playing for Arpia Leichhardt on Sunday rather than playing for the Matildas at this World Cup.
Yeah, obviously, Holly McNamara is such a fantastic player, and I think it's a bit concerning. I think it was a major talking point for a lot of people heading into this tournament, the amount of injured players we have, and now that with Sam Kerr out, and obviously the optimistic approach is that she's out for only 2 games, and with this win, it helps if she's going to need to take that rest in the Canada game as well. I think we're going to see Kyra Cooney cross play as a winger more often and use her in that role, because we did see her in her last season with Melbourne Victory and Jeff Hopkins, her used as a winger. So that is also another option, but she doesn't play there as often. So that's something you're just going to have to leave to the tournament, and it's not the place you kind of want to test new theories out.
Teresa, Sam Kerr, do you think she plays injured at some point? I know that at a World Cup, a lot of people follow football and come into this sport for the first time. This would be the equivalent of Alan Border batting for Queensland with a broken arm. I mean, if Sam Kerr plays with a calf injury that is serious, I mean, this would be a heroic effort. I mean, in an ideal world, Australia beats Nigeria, it's a 6-6-0-0, and maybe Sam Kerr doesn't have to play that third group game and can wait for a round of 16 tie.
Yeah, ideally, I think that the more time she can get to recover, the better. So I think they're banking on getting the results in the group stages, and then, to be quite honest, I think they'll be doing everything they can to get her on the field for the knockout phases.
Any last thoughts on the Matildas before we get a quick word in on New Zealand and then look ahead to tomorrow's games?
No, we got 3 points, Taylor.
3 points.
Yeah, 3 points. 3 points.
It should be 6 after Nigeria in Brisbane, and then Canada might end up being a free hit. So job done tonight. All right, very quickly in the other game, New Zealand beat Norway 1-0. A-League players throughout the New Zealand team. Hannah Wilkinson scored the goal. It's New Zealand's first ever win in a World Cup game. There was 9 minutes of stoppage time, which started with Ria Percival missing a penalty, which made it very nervous. Teresa, your thoughts on Norway, particularly Ada Hegerberg, who really struggled to get into the game and lead the line for her team?
Look, I got some glimpses of the game on the way in, and what I saw from Norway, I was pretty underwhelmed, to be quite honest. They looked sluggish, didn't look themselves at all, and credit to New Zealand, I think it's a major result for them.
Pokuah, you are a New Zealand passport holder and a New Zealand citizen,
am.
so rep 1/3 of the countries that you're repping. Tell us what you thought of New Zealand in this game.
Honestly, I think it's a tremendous result, because I thought the first goal was the most important thing for New Zealand, and if they scored first, maybe they weren't going to get the win, but it would do so much for the crowd and the atmosphere in that stadium. And that one goal, they were able to hold on. Hannah Wilkinson, we've seen her score in the A-League Women's with Melbourne City, and it was, I'm pretty happy. I've got some friends in New Zealand, got some family there as well, and they're all pretty happy about the result.
Teresa, can New Zealand now get out of the group?
Absolutely. They beat arguably the team that everyone thinks is going to top the group. So that's thrown a massive spanner in the works for their group.
All right. quickly ahead to tomorrow's games. Why not? There are 3 coming up. All times are Australian Eastern Standard Time. midday, Nigeria against Canada. The other 2 teams in our group. Teresa, what are you expecting? All the talk about Nigeria has been about squad revolt, mistreatment, a federation seemingly in disarray. Is this the greatest rope-a-dope of all time, or do we think the truth will perhaps bear out and Canada might get an easy win here?
Look, maybe Nigeria want that controversy to be out there. Maybe it's not as
football's the way
maybe
about
it's not as bad as everyone thinks. I think they've been seriously underrated in this tournament. I know Canada have a number of players that haven't had many minutes before this tournament. So it all comes down to the preparation of both teams. It's going to be a tight contest, I believe. I'm thinking it's going to go a 2-1 either way.
And
Your tip?
I think it might be a draw, a 2-2 draw, and
that would be a phenomenal result for Australia.
But what you're saying, Teo, you said those things about Nigerian FA. Those similar things are applying to the Canadian FA. There's so much going on with these federations and heading into this tournament, but I think it's actually a much dangerous game, and I agree with you, Teresa. I think Nigeria is seriously underrated, got some quality players throughout the world, and I think that game against Australia is also a difficult game too, but the 3 points, that's all important.
3 p.m, Alan Stagic's Philippines against Switzerland, the other 2 teams in New Zealand's group. The Philippines, I think, they will take heart from some of the defending that both New Zealand and also the Republic of Ireland put in. Switzerland, I think they would be nervous, maybe coming in as paper favourites, that this might be a World Cup for the underdogs. What do you reckon, Teresa?
Well, so far it's looking a little bit like that. I think, Philippines are very disciplined. They'll have that tight block as well, and it'll come down to the way that Switzerland, what form they're in coming in. It's always hard that first game, getting those nerves out of the way. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Philippines pull off an upset.
Pokuah?
Yeah, no, I agree with Teresa there. I think the Philippines are a really good side and have got some really good recent inclusions as well, with Angie Beard playing for Western United, joining Stag's side as well.
The A-League connections,
the
Pokuah,
A-League
because
connections
Serena Bolden as well.
And that's why I
That's
tell you,
right,
you've got to watch the A-League women, so you're up to date with all the players when you head to the next World Cup and all that. But I think Stag has got his side playing some decent football, and I think he will have them feeling confident, because he will feel confident about the way they're going to play, and I think it's going to be a more difficult game than people give credit for.
And then 5:30 p.m, Spain against Costa Rica. In the Men's World Cup, it was 7-0 to Spain.
Wow.
What sort of scoreline are we looking at tomorrow? Do you think Costa Rica could perhaps frustrate Spain, or is this going to be Spain laying down a marker as one of the tournament favourites?
Look, I don't think it's going to be 7-0. I still think favour Spain. I think they'll get the job done. First game, maybe a 2-0.
Pokuah?
It might not be 7-0, but we might get 7 goals. So it might be 5 goals there. But you know what? It's going to be an entertaining game. I think you've got Spain as the tournament winners,
I do,
Teo.
yes.
You know what? I feel like it's going to be a real marker set, and it's going to be a high marker, that's for sure.
All right, Teresa, thank you so much for joining us on Dub at the Cup. Of course,
Thanks,
we're going to be
guys.
having current A-League players, former Matildas like Teresa, current coaches as well, all through the course of the tournament every day. Pokuah, tell us where we can find all of the fantastic Dub at the Cup content.
Well, you can obviously find us on our YouTube page, KEEPUP's YouTube page, and after every game during the weekend, Teo, you'll be here, and Taryn Heddo's going to be here for another A-League women's commentator as well.
Yep.
So it should be good. Teresa, thank you for joining us, and you too, Teo.
Thanks, guys.
Bye for now.